All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode number 83 of the BS Machine. I'm your host, Tommy Kendi, and I'm super excited about this episode today because just of the way that it came around. I've got this epic human called Rav Thomas, and it was interesting. Me and Rav have known each other for a while, but we haven't entangled each other into each other's lives yet. But Rav reached out to me on Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and since then, he's going to be on in a second, so I'll let him talk about it. But since then, I've done a little dive into what Rav has actually achieved since I saw him at the Vipe Room in LA. What was 5-6 years ago or something like that. But we were both leading a very different life. But he's one of those people that as you dive into someone's life, you sort of start to go, holy shit, this guy's doing heaps of really cool stuff. And one of the reasons I want to get Rav on is because he's following a very similar path to me, where he's really expressing his authentic truth out to the world, and that in turn is really changing a lot of people's lives, and especially men, and something that I'm very passionate about as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll let Rav explain what's going on, and we'll take this conversation to some pretty cool places. But Rav, thank you so much for coming on the BS Machine, mate. Honoured to have you on.
Mate, what an intro. I really humbled, mate. Really appreciate it. I'm glad you mentioned the last time we saw one another, which was in the dressing room at the Viper Room in Hollywood. So now everyone's going to think we're cool now, which is good.
I know.
Like you say, I haven't completely divorced myself from that life, but I don't live it in the same way I used to, when we were both really a part of that sort of doing 6 shows a week somewhere. But yeah, as a single dad now, and in terms of the other work that we do, it was 100% of my life, and now it's probably 2 or 3% only, mate. So, and you're probably quite similar by the sounds of things.
Absolutely, yeah. And just for you guys listening, Rav is he's got his fingers in many pies, but the things that Rav does is he's obviously a musician, which is where we met in Hollywood, and he's released. You've had some like #1 ARIA charting songs and stuff, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I used to, in the words of my 12-year-old daughter, that's when Dad used to be cool. What she doesn't know, that I was never even cool then. But yeah, look, I mean, it's those ones. It's probably, and you led an amazing life doing that yourself, mate. Where you have, we had 3 indie #1s, and we, toured with a lot of major names and did stuff like that. But what it means is you get this resume that reads really well. By and large, it wasn't like that at all. 80% of the stuff that we did through that journey was actually really fucking hard. But you don't talk about that stuff. You just talk about the cool stuff and you showcase that. But yeah, so it certainly was a massive chunk of my life. And like I said, I don't want to be one of those guys that just used to play the acoustic guitar, and we still do it a little bit. But it's, for a number of reasons, it's pretty hard to keep up as you hit, we'll say 40-something, mate.
I know. We both look like spring chickens though still. So if you're joining us on YouTube and you're watching this on YouTube, then you'll be able to see how beautiful Rav is for his mighty age.
47 years young, mate.
Mate, beautiful. And so one of the things I love about Rav, when I started digging in, he's got a really epic podcast called the Dadbod Project. And man, you've had some big names on that podcast. It's unbelievable how cool it is, the names that you get on, and the level of conversations you have around being a man.
Yeah, and that's a massive sort of, I guess, part of the conversation that we're having in general when it comes to the Dadbod Project, is that we know what the mental health statistics look like in Australia, and they're just fucking awful, right? So forget COVID, mate. 6 men in Australia are killing themselves every day. So we know we have to do something. That was something that we could do. COVID allowed us to really set it up to a point that our staff were doing nothing. A lot of the AFL players in particular, but even, a lot of, music industry talent that we work with as well were at a bit of a loose end. So we're able to sort of all contribute in our own way to help create this conversation and help create a platform where all the resources are free and guys can get involved in terms of improving their physical and mental health. But it is a conversation that I think is lacking, and that's, again, why we had a number of people just throw your name under our nose. It's like, I know that bloke, because we're having similar conversations around men's mental health and we're having this conversation with Gus Warland, who is a real trailblazer in this space. He's a real leader in this space. And what makes him great, what makes guys like you great, is that we are having those conversations, but you can still have those conversations and still be masculine. You can still be blokey. You can still be in this space, but it doesn't mean every time you get together with a mate, you've got to sip water and cuddle and cry with one another. You don't have to do those things, but you have the capacity to do those things if and we all agree that we're allowed to do those things if the conversation or the situation warrants it. So that's where this space requires improvement, because it's still all a little bit fluffy. It's still all about ask your mate how he's going, tell him how you're going, all that stuff, which, yes, we need to do, but it needs to, I think we need to, whether it's modernise it a bit or just somehow just let blokes know you can still talk about footy and chicks. You can still have beers if you want to. We'll leave the conversation around alcohol out of it for the second, mate, because I know how hungover you are today, Tommy. So
thanks, Rav.
Yeah. But we can still be blokes. We can still be who we were, but we can develop a capacity to look out for one another and help one another in an era where it's never been more challenging.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you in terms of it does need to go a little bit deeper, because what makes, and it's awesome when you hear guys going, how you going, mate? You're doing all right. You're doing all right. And that's that Aussie way anyway. It's like, how you going, mate? But it's like the immediate answer that would come up, even if you feel like shit, is like, yeah, I'm going all right. And it's scary to go deeper, especially for a man, and
you bet.
And I found even in my life with my close-knit group of mates, when you look out to your mates, and for example, with me, all my mates are super successful, like they're fucking millionaires, they've got houses, they've got this, that, the other, and they're absolutely killing it on a financial front, and for me, when I look at all my best mates, like my close-knit group, sometimes I feel like a bit of a fucking loser, because I haven't built the level of financial gain and the epicness that they've built financially in houses, this, that, and the other. And that's just one example for me. But it could be a different thing for someone else, where so there has to be an opportunity to really speak up, whether it's your mates, whether it's whoever else, and feel like you're going to be heard.
Yeah, mate, that's massive. And you just, with knowing it or without knowing it, you explained what that new version of Aussie masculinity is, and this is where footy very suddenly, and I use footy as one example, but it's a really great example because it's a barometer, particularly here in Melbourne, for what we're all doing, particularly as blokes. But you were right in that moment. You're having a chat with me and you were vulnerable, right? You're saying, I felt like this. I felt a bit weak. I felt inferior. I felt what it is, even though your mates in return are going, hang on a minute, you're judging it by one barometer only, and there's still, but this whole vulnerability is the new masculinity thing, to be able to go to your mates and go, mate, I was insecure today. I felt sad today. I felt lonely today. And again, it doesn't mean you have to do that all the time. It doesn't mean that has to be your everything you talk about, but you have the capacity to do it. And you just did it right then. You said, look, you were saying you have some mates and you're using that as a benchmark for where you've got when you've hit 45 years old. And you express that, well, mate, there's no way our dads would have been able to mention that in conversation.
No.
There's no way.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. It's like leading to this place of vulnerability. But like I remember with myself as a bloke, and we're both, quite masculine, and we have this thing where, people look up to us. We've both got this thing of a masculine nature, and we both have, great energy and whatever that we put out to the world. But I remember one of the first times I was allowed myself to be properly vulnerable. It's fucking scary because you feel the tears, and you're just sitting there going, uh-oh. Like, if I say one more word, I'll probably bawl, I'll let the tears come out. And then that's scary for a guy, because
Yeah.
You don't know what's on the other end of that.
Oh, it's massive. And I think about it now, and particularly say in the spaces that we work with, particularly if you end up in a role of any sort of leadership, large or small, in terms of expressing vulnerability, it's not something that I'm very good at, and particularly say with going through, say, the last couple of years at my end where, I became a single dad, 2.5 years ago. I lost my business on a day's notice. Which, by the way, I don't recommend doing both of those at the same time, by the way. If you're going
But you did.
Pandemics, if people are thinking about, there's a lot of paperwork in a divorce, so you look out for that. But, in terms of those challenges that it presents, I really battled with being able to tell my mates about it, say, like, oh, geez, this day was shit. So it's something that I still probably need to get better at. But it's another, I guess, a reason why we pushed the Dadbod Project in terms of just coming up with ways to deal with those things, as well as talk to your mates. And, we know how important your physical health is, but how that ties into your mental health. And I think everything we do with the Dadbod Project is really around, okay, we know what those suicide statistics are. We know what the statistics are around blokes that attempt suicide, which are, just far, far greater. So we have conversations with great leaders in this space, like yourself, that said, right, I'm one bloke. This is what I did. This is what worked for me. Maybe you try it too, right? So it doesn't mean do this and this will happen, because that's not how it works. And it's the same with your diet. It's the same with your training. It's the same with anything you do. It's like, okay, this is what I did. This helped me. For me, it's my physical training. It's if I'm able to do that, then I'll cope with everything else. That might not work for you. For a lot of blokes, it's meditation. For a lot of blokes, it's in the spaces that you're talking about in terms of whether it be yoga or whatever else. It might be cold water dips like you did this morning to try and clear your hangover. But that's our general rhetoric, is that, okay, let's try, however which way we do it, to just get a little bit better every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, the other interesting thing is, Rav, is only speaking me from experience, but even when you do go out and seek help, whether it's a psychologist or, you try meditation, or you try and do all these things, you fucking read books and you look at all the posts on Instagram, it's like, and ultimately what I found is that even though all those things really help and they're great, but it always feels like there's something missing. And what I found is you have to get to a point in your life where you've got to make a choice. It's like, you know what? I'm fucking over myself. I'm doing this. Like I'm moving deeper into vulnerability, and I'm going to check out what's on the other side. Whether it's vulnerability, whether it's just making a choice to fix your diet, or just to go, you know what? Even though I'm fucking scared, I'm going to go to a yoga class. Or even though I'm fucking scared, or I don't know how to meditate, I'm just going to sit, and for the next 2 fucking weeks, I'm going to sit down and I'm meditating 5 minutes a day. It's done. That's just what it is. So you have to get to a point where you make a choice to move forward. And that's why I love what you do. You speak, and you're dealing with AFL players who are seen as the most macho guys in Australia. I mean, these guys are the top of the game, super fit, super healthy, and people look up to these guys. And vulnerability is not something that you would see these guys often dive into. So how do you find? I mean, what do you find working with so many top elite athletes and AFL players?
Well, this is where it's changed. And this is the beauty of it. And it's not changed completely. And, we did an appearance at so Matthew Richardson and I, who, Richo's really the face of the Dadbod Project, if you will. We just did an event this morning at a local footy club. And as to what point that's filtered down yet, I'm not sure, because footy clubs were very synonymous with, right, you're a man, we're like this, you need to be like this. If you're battling, you don't speak up, you don't, they were really a cauldron of masculinity with some great benefits and great social networks and things like that, but also for the wrong reasons that we're talking about. And that's where, particularly the example of the Richmond Footy Club, who have embraced differences in everybody, embraced vulnerability, have had leaders of the club go, you know what, like, I'm under pressure here. This is really, really shit. And I'm letting you all know. That's something that never would have happened, not even 10 years ago. So that's where the game is changing. And that's where we keep these conversations open, because it means guys on the street and guys like you and I having a conversation. We had a conversation on the phone last week where you basically told me a challenge that you were going through, which I think you had mentioned on your podcast.
Yeah.
Mate, there's no way, even half a generation ago, that would happen. There's no way you would have said, I was facing this challenge. And particularly in your case, you were facing a challenge that that was, extra unique and extra challenging from a male perspective as well, in terms of what you went through. So we're getting better at it, and we're just going to keep trying to get better at it. And like you say, it might be meditation, it might be your deadlifts, it might be whatever your thing is, it might be neating up your diet. We're about to launch a challenge tomorrow, for what it's worth, where we're running to Sydney, which is 1,000 Ks, but we're doing it over 365 days, right? So it's basically a figurative concept where all of us are just going to run it's less than 3 Ks a day, it's 2.7 Ks a day. And so if you miss a day, you just do more the next day. And it's all about, just as blokes, let's take responsibility and let's get ourselves a little bit better every day. And you were saying trying some of this stuff. Well, look, it might not work. And sometimes it's fucking way out of your comfort zone, right?
True, yeah.
You know, a lot of us are not overly flexible, mate. So if you're taking us to a Pilates class, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But let's give it a razz. Let's give it a go. Let's try and get a little bit better every day to better insulate ourselves from the challenges that we're up against.
And so what do you reckon, if you're a bloke, listen to this podcast and you're sort of sitting back, because I reckon a lot of guys don't know when it's time to ask for help.
Sure.
You know, it's like, at what point do I need to go ask for help? What's the point? Is it when, you know, I have a couple of depressed days? Is it when I can't sleep anymore? At what point do we go ask for help? Because it's I reckon it's a big question. Blokes are sitting back going, do you know what? I've thought about killing myself a couple of times, but haven't actually done it. So I don't need help yet. You know, I mean, what's the point?
It's a great point. Well, a couple of things. First, I'm not a qualified expert in the field, and that's what we say with everything we do. And Richo, everyone from Shannon, and Gary Ablett, all the guys, that I'm one bloke. This is what I do. This might work for you, it might not, whatever. So that's always going to be our stance. So I'm not an expert in this field, but you're spot on, because a lot of blokes have that, we love a good ignore it until it goes away mentality to a lot of things. A lot of us have had a toothache for 6 months, and we're like, my lower back's been hurting for, I'm struggling to run. I probably should deal with that. So you're right. And there's no right answer to that. And I don't know what the answer to this is. What I know is that there are a lot of guys will struggle to say, okay, if I'm going to get myself a little bit better every day, well, where do I go for that inspiration? What's the first thing I can do? And certainly for the Dadbod Project, our niche within a niche is physical health. And if you're physically in better shape, it probably at least gives you a better chance. So the first thing you can do if you're not sure, and which ties into the challenge that we're launching tomorrow, is go for a walk, right? Go for a walk. And it might be for you, like you were saying, meditation. Try 5 minutes. It's probably not, who knows, but do 5 minutes the next day, do 6 minutes the next day, whatever it is. So at least then you're doing something rather than nothing. But in terms of when to reach out for help, look, I had a conversation with a doctor mate of mine about this, who deals in the space, and he said, if you're asking yourself that question, then you've probably already answered it.
Very true, very true. Yeah, it's a scary place. And also in relationships, like I find with a lot of my coaching clients, I find probably out of all my coaching clients, I reckon 60-70% of them are men. And an area where I find a lot of men struggle is in relationships, where, you know, they're trying to be the man, they're trying to look after their family, they're trying. And what usually ends up happening is that if they're in a different sex marriage, like woman and man, then usually the woman goes into the masculine and then the dude becomes the fucking feminine, you know? And he and to get back up into that equilibrium, to find that, you know, step back into his masculine is super hard when the way women feel that they need to deal with men that aren't listening, I'll put that in quotation commas, is to keep jabbing them, poking them, keep pushing them down, and then maybe they'll learn, you know? So I think men also have to have a level of knowledge in relationships about just accepting the way things are, and then just, you know, tapping into what's important to them, how they want to be, and stop trying to change the world, stop trying to change other people, and really bring the focus back onto themselves and getting themselves better, instead of trying to get their partner to act in a certain way where they feel safe. So this is what I'm talking about. We just need to bring the focus back onto ourselves and make powerful choices.
What you said is massive. And in terms of the blokes that we deal with too, you are spot on. And it's such a root of genuine loneliness for men in that country. And this is another reason why we should have conversations like this, because men will speak very generically, and we're using quite gender-specific language in this instance, you know, so I recognise that. But a lot of blokes feel very, very lonely in that situation. They feel like it's just them. So the first thing, if you're having a conversation with other blokes who are married or divorced or in relationships like that, you'll find that a lot of you blokes feel exactly like that. So that doesn't solve your problem. But at first, if you know it's not just you, that really does take the edge off your loneliness. But yeah, like it's such a massive spot, like you were saying about, you know, where men often feel like they're just their head down, tail up. No one checks in on them. No one asks how they are. You know, no, they're working 6 days a week to feed their kids, and no one says, mate, are you okay? And then if you have a lot of other challenges, particularly around when kids come, they're very female-dominated conversations, and as they should be. Like, breastfeeding is pretty hard, as I understand it. You know, giving birth, that's probably pretty hard. Not sleeping is hard on everyone, all those things. But I think a lot of blokes feel when they get to this point is they're left out of the conversation. No one's asking how they are a lot of times. And so that's where the challenge lies for everybody. I think once you're in that zone, particularly that zone that we're talking about, where you've been married for a bit, young kids come along, your missus doesn't ask how you are anymore, and you have your own challenges, you have your own grief for things that have happened, and it's like you have to suffer in silence while the rest of that conversation plays out. So that's I can really picture the way you described your conversations with your male coaching clients, because we see the same thing.
And can I just ask, Rav, when you're whether it's a Dadbod Project or with your events company or just even your music, what is the point where you see, like, let's say if you and Richo, you know, you're out doing some stuff for the Dadbod Project, what's the point where you see men sort of light up?
Yeah, great question. And I reckon there are several. And a lot of it is around sort of, because it is, our conversations are not permanently heavy. And I guess that gets back to my very first point, is that we're going to have these conversations. Again, you can still have a beer, you can still talk about footy, you can still giggle, you can still prank your mates, right? We don't have to change what we're already doing. We're just adding something to what we're doing. So the first thing when guys light up is they're relieved just the fact you can still, Robbo in the corner can still be who Robbo is, right? So we're not asking you to cuddle your mates and sit around and cry and stop drinking and do all those things. You can still be exactly who you were. So there's a real sense of relief for guys like that. When, we're not here to change anything. We're just here to maybe add a bit to the conversation. So I think that, but the first thing is when guys, I don't know whether it's light up, but it's that sense of relief when we have conversations like this and like, shit, right, yeah, that's how I feel. Okay, it's not just me. I already feel better that I have been very lonely in this relationship, in this home or whatever. because of the dynamic that you're talking about. So I think, there's a real sense of relief for the guys, and they realise that they're not the only ones that are trying to punch their way through it.
Mm. I mean, the little bit of pause was just me, sort of tapping into what you're sort of saying, and then I mean, so what with what you do, what is the actual outcome of what you want to see happen?
Yeah, the outcome is that as Aussie blokes, we try and get a bit better every day, right? And we find our way for whatever that is. So it might be something as simple. Let's walk 2.7 k's a day. If your knees are good enough, run. And so that's the first thing. Let's get ourselves, because we can control those things, right? So, and it comes back to what you were saying about, okay, let's take responsibility. Let's say I'm one bloke, I'm going to try and make myself a little bit better every day. And in return, I'm going to be a better bloke. I'll be a better mate. I'll be a better dad. I'll be a better husband if I'm married. And that's my focus. Like you're saying, I'm not focused on my life. I'm not focused on those things. I'm just going to make myself a little bit better. But so it's around that. It's helping blokes do that, but it's then providing those free resources for guys who want to do that. Say, okay, well, how do I do it? And then be part of the conversation. Be part of the conversation that we're having. That, like I said, even 5 years ago, wouldn't have been a thing. You and I having this conversation 5 years ago was very hippie and fluffy and whatever. Whereas now it's like, okay, cool. This is this is really, I think our audience is going to go, okay, this is, well, I hope they go, this is helpful. And it's time.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the thing. It's actually, it's actually quite an honor to be a dude, I reckon. It really is an honor. And when you look at all the sort of struggles that men go through, and the challenges that we go through as men, we should almost look at those things as an honor to be able to, rise to the kingdom, because that's ultimately what men want to feel. They want to feel like they're the king of their domain, But even if we look back over to ancient times, thousands of years ago, the men, they had to rise to lead their armies or to lead a kingdom, and all the pussy kings didn't last a fucking second, So it's like we should look at this journey of being a man as being an honor. And even, sometimes I look at the challenges that come in for me, and if I can become aware in those moments, whether it's a conflict with my girlfriend, or whether it's a conflict at work, or whatever it might be, or a challenge, or whether it's monetary, whatever it is, when it comes in, I just take a little seat back, I take a breath, and I go, fuck, how cool. Like, I actually get to experience this. I don't need to know how I'm going to work it out, but how awesome is it that I get to experience this? And that's going to be my growth, being able to look at this as an honor to move through this challenge. And that's what a lot of blokes don't get, I believe. And I'm not talking of this, like, I'm not talking down to people, but I reckon that a lot of blokes, when they go through shit times, 99% of them, once they come out of it, which they always do, they then go on to teaching others how not to fuck up and do the same shit that they went through. So really, we should look at this as an honor, all the struggles that we go through.
That word is massive, mate. That is really, really massive. If we're going to underline anything, I reckon that's it. Because what you've done there, you've found your own coping mechanism. You found your way by just reframing it. Saying, okay, I'm a bloke and I'm going to own it. I'm going to love it, right? And I think that you make a great point. Blokes want to be blokes, right? So we don't want to do that fluffy stuff all the time that we're talking about. We want the capability to do it, and we want to accept all between us that we're allowed to do it, because we never used to be allowed to do it. But it doesn't mean we want to change who we are as blokes. We blokes want to be blokes. And for what it's worth, I'm here to tell you that that's what your missus wants as well.
It's very true. Very, very true. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're spot on. I think a lot of blokes feel like they get that beaten out of them a little bit.
Yeah,
and that's not just in a relationship. And please don't think we're having a go at the wives or the girlfriends in this situation, because a lot of it is really societal and cultural. And, and with that extreme shift that's happened in the last probably 2 decades, and you see it around everything from sitcoms to whatever else, that masculine figure in a house went from being the man of the house to Homer really quite quickly, and how that sort of shifted into all of our cultural regimen a little bit.
Yeah. And so with what you do, Rav, what was probably the key standout to this point where you sort of stood back and went, wow, we're really making a difference here?
Oh, look, we've had a number of people come to us and say, we saved their life, right? And
can you give me an example, like actually go into it?
Yeah, we had one guy that had made a number of attempts, and then he became part of the Dadbod Project and became part of our, he was coming to a few AFL events where we were sort of touching it and stuff as well. And he took ownership. He went home, he bought a treadmill. And I think that's, again, we talk about a niche within a niche. So it took him a year, he dropped 50 kilos.
Wow.
And it completely changed his mental health. So he's a guy we still sort of check in on and catch up with. And but I guess our thing from the start was that, take control of your physical health is a good way to also at least give you a better chance of taking control of your mental health. And that's something we still profess, So our pillars are diet, training and mental health. So what this guy did, rather than focus on his mental health and how he was really shit, he goes, what I'm going to do is get myself physically better. And he did that quite immediately and quite drastically, where he changed his diet. And this is the other thing, it's actually not that hard. I think a lot of blokes, and I know there are some blokes that are in great nick right now that still may be battling mentally. And I know some blokes that have crossed this, but for some who don't know how to make themselves physically better with diet, they're like, there's so much information, I don't know where to begin. And that's part of the free resource that we at least help try and provide, which might be, try basmati rice instead of regular rice, whatever it is, right? So lots and lots of little things added together. But in this instance, there's a great example of a bloke who went, right, I'm going to focus on what I can control. What I can control is my physical health. I'm going to get myself physically better. I'm going to eat a little bit better. And it was what we call genuinely life-changing.
And how did that affect you?
Oh, well, it means, I guess, it's nice to know that at least in some instances, that as an organisation, we're right. It's like, okay, this is our ethos. This is what we think will at least help one person or someone. And it's the same with you, mate. You will be like, if we help one person, then it's worth it. So it was like, okay, well, we're right. Here's a good example. He was a really key example of the people that at least we know, because you will know yourself, you'll have a lot of people that listen to your podcast that you don't even know that you're helping. So, but, I think with all of us, and this probably comes back to me as well, you know what your true north is, you know what's right. So whether someone's thanking you, whether you're getting that validation or not, and that can be really, really hard, but you put your head down, your tail up, and you march forward in that direction, no matter what rocks are getting chucked at you or whatever's happening. Well, that's, I think, with the Dadbod Project in that instance, we went, okay, we have helped our one person, and we've had some wonderful stories like that since. And we don't highlight those, by the way, because a lot of those guys, they don't want to be, they don't want to make themselves, and they don't want to make themselves the centre of attention as well. They feel a bit icky about it, which you totally get. But it means, okay, this is our true north. This is where we're going. We're going to keep doing it, and see if we can help one other bloke or one other bloke. And by the way, again, we're using really gender-specific language as far as that goes. We know that as our followership is mainly men, but not exclusively. So there will be information around that can help women too. So come one, come all. As far as
absolutely. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, this episode just ended up being on dudes, like it just ended up being focused on men. But yeah, 100%. In terms of mental health, I mean, obviously the whole planet is in dire need of that. And look, I mean, this true north that you're talking about, ultimately, in my experience of living, I know that I'm in the best version of myself when I'm experiencing love and joy and adventure, right? And I think in terms of men, and this is something that you spoke about before, is that you don't have to be this spiritual guru, or you don't have to have a six pack, or you don't have to be like all holy and sit in meditation for hours on end and third eyes and chakras and whatever else. It's so, all of that stuff is so irrelevant unless you want to know about it, but we can feel these things anyway. And where I was going with this is that I think one of the key things that men should realize is not to take things so fucking serious. Like even if the shit is majorly hitting the fan. I've got a really cool example. One of my coaching clients was, he was carrying a bit of weight. It's probably about 30 kgs over what he should be. Had a gut, belly, blah, 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 all this type of stuff. And he was just so down about it. And what we actually did, one of the things I got him to do is just for 7 days to stand in front of the mirror naked, right? And just grab his gut and just wobble his belly around and go, oh, there's my fucking belly, and all he could do was laugh that whole time, and then the next part is just like bash his chest as like a gorilla, and have this ability to fucking laugh at yourself. It doesn't matter how bad shit gets. There's always that opportunity to laugh at yourself and go, wow, how did I create this shit? This was a good creation for me. I really fucked up with this one. And it takes the pressure off, I mean,
That's massive, mate. That's massive. And I'll tell you why, because, and this is where AFL has got so much better. If you watched the game last night, even the team that lost had a bit of a smile, right? So you're allowed to laugh now and you weren't before. So that's huge. But that whole thing about just still being able to lighten up, you really highlighted something wonderful about all the stuff that we're talking about. And even say when you and I are having a conversation like this, mate, I'm a bogan from Tassie, right? And I don't want to lose that part of myself, and I don't want to lose that sort of jocular part of myself. But but we can still talk about this stuff, talk about how you're helping other men, without losing that part of yourself that we're talking about. But that's brilliant. What you've done in 2 instances, you've explained how you reframe something like that for yourself in terms of you talking about how it's an honour to be a bloke, but you reframe that for your client immediately, right? Yeah. You completely flipped it on its head with basically a word. Sort of said, okay, and then that frees him up. And a lot of the stuff we talk about, say, with clubs that have been successful, footy clubs at all levels in the last little bit, that's one way that they have done it. And even, say, teams like Richmond, who went better part of 4 decades without success and were feeling extreme pressure, mate, that footy club suddenly went, you're allowed to be yourself. And not only that, we're going to celebrate it, right? We're going to tell jokes at half time now instead of being, right, you have to be like this, you have to try harder. And it completely revolutionised that group, and they're wonderful lessons for you and I and for other footy clubs and for businesses. So you make a terrific point. Don't make sure you allow time to be silly, because we're all little boys, let's face it. So don't lose that in this process.
Yeah, I call mine I've got a cowboy. I've got a cowboy inside, and when the cowboy comes out to play, holy shit, I'm like, all right. It's like, it's cowboy time.
Yeah, and don't hashtag cowboy time. That's you get that training. It is. It's really, really important, because these conversations, and again, it comes back to these conversations feel so fucking serious, and they don't have to be entirely serious, I guess.
Yeah. And can I just ask, Rav, what's been sort of the biggest challenge, if you don't mind me asking, for you in life? Like, what was the point where you're like, fuck, man, something's going on, so I've got to change shit up?
Look, probably a lot. I mean, I had nodules twice and I was a singer full time. And so sort of getting my head around that, particularly the first time at 23, I had some real challenges around self-identity there, which is like, I was told I might not sing again at that point. And that's a big thing with a lot of blokes, because still it was especially the case for our dads. but it still is the case for us is you are what you do. And a lot of us still struggle to divorce ourselves from that. So, so that was certainly a challenge. And I came from a broken home, mate. And those things are a challenge. But look, the challenges for me now, particularly being a single dad, is it really about, and I think a lot of blokes feel like this, and a lot of mums would feel like this too, is you become particularly having three of us lived in a house together for 2 years like this. So, your kids, my kids are my life and became my life. So we've all just got that challenge, even despite all the other work that I'm doing, is to just keep a life outside of your children and make sure that they're not your only barometer for happiness. And I think, if you're managing to do this and you still concentrate on your own self-improvement, then you still will be a better dad. So I think probably in recent times that's been the challenge, is just managing kids through a divorce, through a pandemic, and making sure that they are happy. That's hard for everyone, So a shout out to all the mums and dads out there, particularly in Melbourne, that have been through that.
Mm. And so are you a single dad full time?
A big chunk of the time, mate. Yeah, and it's a genuine privilege. I certainly I've never complained about it. It's a privilege and I love it.
Yeah. Man, so good. And so what?
Where you... Wait till you get a teenage daughter. I know, I was told it. It's true.
How old's your daughter?
So she's 12. And by the way, I think there's a real sort of jocular undertone to all that. Oh, wait till your kids are teenagers and whatever. And what they tell you is going to happen is going to happen. And for me, none of it's bad. No one's yelling at each other. There's none of that sort of stuff, but it's just really, really different. And I think for all parents, but particularly I think as a single dad, where for the first time as a parent, I don't know what's going to happen next, right? No one does. No one in the house does. Her brother doesn't know what's going to happen next. So it's like, okay, well, let's see this. And like you say, embrace that. See it as an honour. See it as a privilege, and go, righto, and don't forget to laugh about it, and go, righto, let's see what today brings, and we'll find out. Yeah.
And so where are you taking everything now, Rav? I mean, and by the way, how cool's your name? Like Rav Thomas, that's a fucking cool name. Where's that from?
Thank you.
I mean, I know you're a bogan from Tassie, but Rav, is that, I don't know, where's it from?
It's a bogan name. Well, it's short for Ravi. I was actually signed to a major label in 2008. And yeah, so the good people at that label were like, Ravi, it just doesn't match. So we're sort of abbreviated at that point. But yeah, it is and it's almost become between, I get called Rav a lot, so it's a bit of a nickname within a nickname. But yeah, I appreciate it, mate. At least I'm easy to find on Instagram. So
yeah, true that.
There are not many others, I don't think.
Do you know, and just while we're talking, it's so interesting. I don't know if you've been told this before, but you remind me of like an Aussie Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, mate, I'll take that because I think the ladies like him. I don't know. I'm one of those heads, I think, that look like other people. I get told I look like someone, and it might be, Phil from some footy club or something, but I get told I look like people a lot. And, mate, they're not always good-looking roosters either. So if you're going to say Mark Wahlberg, it's like, I'll take it. I'm still...
no, but even your mannerisms.
I don't know how close I am to Mark Wahlberg's rig, but,
Yeah.
In the right lighting with the right shadowing, if I'm, doing this,
Oh, very cool. So, Rav, if people want to like hook up with you and connect with you and get involved in the Dadbod Project or the other sort of stuff and by the way, check out Rav's music stuff on his YouTube channel. It's just Rav Thomas, isn't it, or Spotify, mate? Yeah, kick-ass songs. That astronaut song is epic.
Oh, thank you, mate. Look, I mean, it feels like a bit of another lifetime. That stuff, There's a lot of and there's a look. If you want to look it up, there's a lot of stuff on there that's really quite shit as well. So look forward to a good laugh at our expense as well. From back when we certainly didn't have any budgets to make any decent music videos. Yeah. But yeah, for the Dadbod Project, the.dadbod.project, which is on Instagram and TikTok, and any messages you sent, someone will always reply, and that might be one of the personal trainers that donates their time, or any one of our guys, because it's entirely a not-for-profit organisation. And the Dadbod Project podcast is on, so we're going to have we've had a lot of great names on that, from Chris Cheney to Richo does a fair bit of stuff with us as well, and we might even have the great Tommy Kendi on here at some point if we can if we can talk him into it.
Oh mate, I'd be honoured to come on. It'll be epic. But man, it's so cool what you're doing, Rav, and I love speaking to people like you, because it's like your truth and your natural ability is helping other people. And there's so many more blokes out there that have that gift, and you're actually doing it, so it's just such I love speaking to people like you, because it is the world needs people that can get out there and bring the community together and help us feel more love, more connectedness, more togetherness. That's really all life is, I reckon, is just finding different ways to connect deeper and deeper with our little familia, which is other human beings.
Yeah. Look, I'm really grateful for that little rundown there, mate. I really appreciate it. It doesn't mean we always get it right, by the way, either, but at least we, like I said to you, we know how many men and women in Australia need help, need this conversation. And there are a lot of people listening to this that themselves could be leaders in this space as well, or at the very least, leaders amongst their friendship group, or leaders with one mate, or whoever it is, to at least have a crack at making things a bit better.
Love it, Rav. Mate, such an honour to have you on. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Rav Thomas. And by the way, I'll put all the notes in the episode notes, in the podcast notes, so you can hit up and connect with Rav. But mate, honour to have you on. Thanks for coming on, Rav.
A privilege, mate.